Hey, it's Mark Zimmerman, President and Chief Operating Officer of Renters Warehouse Houston. I am so happy that you decided to click on this video today. On a side note real quick, just know that we are a property leasing and property management company for residential rental properties in the greater Houston area. So if you have a need, please reach out to us. We'd love to help you out. So make that happen. But anyway, enough of that. Today we're going to talk about finding real estate, finding investment property to purchase. It's a very important topic because a lot of times it's the most difficult part of the whole process that you go through to basically be an investor, right? Finding the property is hard. Of course, negotiating is hard, fixing it up's hard, selling it's hard, blah, blah, blah. But in my opinion, finding real estate can be very difficult. So we're going to talk about some ways, some places, some tricks and tips that you can use to find investment real estate. You may have already thought of these. You may be already doing some, but maybe we'll talk about one that you didn't think of. I don't know. But let's go through it pretty quickly and see what you think, see if we can provide some value here. So finding investment property. And when I'm talking about finding investment property, of course, again, I do mean residential real estate. So the big one, the ones that a lot of people use, is the multiple listing service, right? MLS. In some markets, it's not that big of a deal. In Houston, it's huge, as everyone knows. If you're not on MLS, you're kind of missing the boat when you're trying to sell property. In other markets, like in, say, Minneapolis, it's not a big deal at all, and a lot of realtors don't even use their multiple listing service. But in Houston, it's a big deal. Houston Association of Realtors, or HAR.com, is what drives that bus. Anyway, so if you can get access to MLS, it's a great place to look for investment property. But what you're going to need to do is, number one, you need to set up a customizable saved search that you check every morning. And what I mean by that is, MLS will allow you to go in and select some criteria, your buying criteria, and then it'll automatically do that search for you, and you can go in and do that search every morning and not have to put all the data back in every time you do it. So, for example, a lot of times when I'm looking to buy deeply discounted properties, especially in my old We Buy Ugly Houses franchise that I used to own, we would do searches. It would be tax value less than $250,000, age of property, 10 years or older. We do that for the equity part, right? You want these houses to be paid off some so they can take a discount on that offer. You can pick by zip code, you can pick by neighborhood, you can pick by square footage, you can pick all of this different criteria. And once you get those together, which is kind of your buying box, you can have MLS do that search every morning. And then what you do is when you go in every morning, if something new pops up when you run that search, then you jump on it real quick, right? So if you get access to MLS, that's a great way to use it to find deals. You're going to have to wade through a lot, and in this market, you're going to have to move very quickly, right? It's a hot seller's market right now. If you don't have access to MLS, you have a couple options, right? One, you can partner up with a realtor who knows investment property. That's the key to help you with this search and to do those searches for you. However, I want you to remember that realtors get paid a commission once the property, the seller, the buy closes. So they're not going to be very fired up to work for free, running searches every morning for you, trying to grab that deal for you just so they can get that commission if you decide to buy it sometime in the future and it maybe closes. See how that's a little wanky? So a lot of times what you can do is come up with a financial incentive. Maybe you give them $50 for every time they do it. Maybe you give them a part of the profit. I don't know. There's ways to give your realtor an incentive to do these searches, right? So they'll do them for you. Another way that you can get access to MLS is there are some services that provide that for you. One that I've used in the past is called Real Estate IQ. Real Estate IQ. Steve over there is a great guy, and you can pay a fee and you can tell them what you want, and they'll send you new deals every day that fit your criteria. So it kind of gives you access for that same data and those same type of properties. So if you don't have access to a realtor you can partner up with, you can use a service like Real Estate IQ. One thing I will say on the side is don't forget expired and terminated listings. Those can be a great property to go after. Because think about it. If it expires, let's say it was listed for 3 months, for 90 days, for 6 months, and then the listing just expired, that means it didn't sell. Now, there's probably some issues as to why it didn't sell. Could be the price was too high, the condition of the property, I don't know. But sometimes you can go back to those owners where those listings have expired, and then they're maybe willing to take a discounted price, or at least think about selling the property to you. Terminated listings, kind of the same thing, right? You got to wonder why they terminated with that particular realtor, but certainly someone else that you want to reach out to because it might be a deal that's not going to show up as an active listing in MLS. So think about those. So let's talk about the pros and the cons to using MLS, right? The pros on that is it's easily accessible, right? You can either get access to MLS in various ways, or engage with a realtor, or engage with a service like Real Estate IQ, easily accessible. If you're not using a service, it's free, so that's nice. And there's tons of properties available on MLS, especially in the Houston market, right? So that's the pro of using MLS. The cons, though, is, especially in this hot seller's market right now, you got to move fast. You got to move very fast because these properties are getting just going down right and left. How? Part of that about having to move fast is your due diligence might suffer, right? I mean, I never want to make offers sight unseen. That's wild, but some people do it. So you just want to make sure that your due diligence doesn't suffer, and it can suffer if you're having to move very quickly on MLS. But at least you could maybe get under a contract with a low option fee of maybe like $100 for 10 days, and then you can do your due diligence knowing that you might be out $100 if it doesn't fit your criteria or doesn't turn out to be the property that you thought it was or hoped that it might be, right? So that's MLS, pros and cons. So now let's talk about another way to find residential investment property. And this is one of my favorites, and that's local flippers, local wholesalers, and even local national buyers like the We Buy Ugly Houses offices that might be in your market. I used to own one up in the Woodlands north of Houston for years. So anyway, both local wholesalers, flippers, and We Buy Ugly Houses offices will many times have more inventory, I know I did, than I could rehab, or maybe I didn't want to rehab something, and I would just sell it as is at a discount to get it off my books, right? So maybe I bought a house I don't really want to rehab, and I bought it at 60 cents on the dollar, and so I'm willing to sell it for 70 cents on the dollar to make a quick, $5,000 and be done with it. So you definitely want to hit those folks up. And again, there's wholesalers that their entire job is to find property, get under contract, and then sell it to somebody as is. So you got to get involved with those. Now, Google is a great way to find them, the wholesalers, the We Buy Ugly Houses folks. So find those local offices, reach out to those local offices. But there are some pros and cons associated with using this source, and that is, one, on the pro side, they're easily accessible. A lot of times they know kind of what the numbers are. We've talked about in another video about how you make sure that a purchase fits the numbers being at a deep enough discount to cover your short-term hard money if you go down that road, and your closing costs and your repairs, and how you buy it deep enough so you don't have to bring any money to the table, which is something I love. But anyway, the nice thing is that these wholesalers and even the offices like the We Buy Ugly Houses guys and gals, they're going to understand the numbers and price your properties accordingly, so that way you can buy it, right? And it fits your numbers. But here's the downside of it, the con, and that is you got to stay in regular contact with all of these folks. You can't have a nice conversation for an hour one time and expect them to remember you a month or two down the road. You can even do it like once or twice and expect them to remember you. You absolutely have to stay in regular contact with these people in order for them to think, I'll call Mark on this deal that I don't want to fix up and sell myself. I'll just sell it to him as is. You've got to do that. That is so important, which means you're just going to have to, on a regular basis, pick 5, 10 of these folks and just hit them once a week, check in. Maybe you go to breakfast, maybe you go to lunch, maybe drop off some donuts at their office. You want to do all sorts of things to keep you in their mind so they call you. Perfect little side story on that. When I had my We Buy Ugly Houses office, I used to meet 3 other offices that also had franchises in other parts of the city at a restaurant that was at 59 and Kirby, south of downtown in Houston. It took me about an hour and 45 minutes one way to drive down there to meet these 3 other offices for lunch. It was about a 3-hour round trip for me, a little over a 3-hour round trip just in driving, and another hour, hour and a half at lunch. We're talking about killing half of my day. Why did I do that every Tuesday for 7 or 8 years? Well, the answer is we would be having lunch, and invariably one of them would be like, man, I just contracted a house all the way up in Willis, Texas, way north of Houston and way north of where my franchise is. And you think you might want to buy it from me? Because I don't want to drive up there and deal with it. And of course I was in North Houston, so I'm like, absolutely. About every month or two, I would buy a house from that lunch. And when you're averaging $15,000, $20,000 in net profit on a deal, all of a sudden making that commitment and picking up 1 or 2 houses a month, that's a pretty good deal, right? But I truly believe that they wouldn't have thought to say, hey, maybe we'll see if Mark wants to buy that property as is if I hadn't been there having lunch and we're talking about it. And I used to reciprocate. I'd be like, you know what? I got a lead on a house down in Texas City, which is down by the coast, down south about an hour and a half, about 3 hours from where my franchise was. Hey, you guys want to take that lead, or do y'all want to buy that house as is if I went ahead and contracted it? So there's a lot of give and take there. I highly recommend doing that. So those are your pros and cons on dealing with local flippers and local home buying offices like with the We Bugly Houses folks. So here's another one that some people forget. Call the Bandit signs that you see all over the neighborhoods that you want to buy in. You know, little Bandit signs are the little signs about yay big that are stuck on the side of the corner and they're all over the place. Call Bob, call Johnny Cash, call B, call Mom, call somebody. I want to buy your house, cash as is, close in 7 days. We pay cash, blah, 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 right? So you see these signs everywhere. When I started in this investment game 21 years ago, people didn't do Bandit signs. You didn't see them everywhere. Now they're on every corner because somebody's been in a seminar. But anyway, when you see those, you've got to understand that those are investors just like you and just like the previous folks we talked about, the wholesalers and the We Buy Ugly Houses folks. These Bandit sign folks a lot of times will have properties that they want to sell as is. So they're a great source. Now, here's what you're going to have to do. A lot of times you're not going to get somebody on the phone because there are fines associated with putting up Bandit signs in certain parts of the city. So what people do to get around that is they never answer the phone live. You leave a voicemail. A lot of times they use a burner phone or just some random phone number, right? They just get a phone number or a Google phone number. So that way you really can't figure out where they live or what they do, right? Because they don't want to get fined by the city or the county. So you're going to have to leave a voicemail. But don't leave a voicemail saying, hey, I'd like to buy some property from you. Instead say, hey, I've got a property that I'm thinking about selling. And that's not a lie. You might have a property that you're thinking about selling, or maybe you will at some point. But that's what's going to get them to return your call is if you tell them in the voicemail, I've got a property that I'm thinking about selling, please call me. So when they call you back, you can tell them that the house that you had to sell, you went ahead and sold it to somebody else, but let them know that you're an investor just like them. Let them know that you're pre-approved, that you got a great hard money lender, you got cash, and that you buy property and you would love to buy their unwanted inventory. And again, just like the wholesalers and the home buying offices, you're going to have to stay in contact with them, right? But tell them that, and maybe they'll throw you a couple of houses down the road, or maybe they have one available right then. So let's talk about the pros and cons for this one, for calling Bandit signs. Well, the pro is, again, it's very easily accessible. You can do this. Anybody can do this. It's a great way to do it. A lot of times they'll just assign the contract to you, and we'll talk about assigning contracts in another video. But that's kind of nice because now you don't have to double close. And no one's doing this. So you're not going to have a ton of competition, right? It's not like the multiple listing service where every realtor in town is going on there looking at investment property. So those are the pros. Now the pros. The cons are that, again, you're going to have to stay in contact with these folks on a regular basis or they'll forget about you. So you got another group of folks that you're going to have to reach out to and just check in. And don't always say, what can you do for me? See if you can help them out, right? There's always things you can do. A lot of times I'd refer these guys, maybe my insurance guy or a contractor that was looking for a little bit of work, just to help them out so they'd think about me when it was time to pay it forward, okay? So that's calling Bandit signs. Another option that you have is you can place your own Bandit signs, right? So you get them printed up. There are places that will print those signs up for nothing, you know, $1 a sign, including the stake. You print them up, you put them in areas, you know, where you want to buy. There's even people that will do this for you. There are actual Bandit sign placers that for like $1 a sign or 50 cents a sign will literally put out the signs for you. You just tell them where to put them and where not to put them. Couple things on a side note there. If you go down this road, make sure they don't put it anywhere on any highways, because then that's the state and they will come after you and find you big time. A lot of times what you can do is you can place them Friday afternoon and pick them up Sunday evening, and then you won't get any fines. You'll see realtors doing that for open houses and stuff, because most of the city officials that are looking for those Bandit signs don't work weekends, so you just pick them up, place them on Fridays, pick them up on Sundays. But there's going to be an additional charge, usually like 50 cents a sign or $1 a sign, to pick them up. But that's a way you can avoid signs. But anyway, when you do your signs, you want to think about just something funny that catches people's eyes, or maybe you want to be professional. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different marketing creative ideas regarding Bandit signs and about 80 different opinions. I've seen some that say, you know, Johnny Cash pays cash for houses. That's kind of fun. I saw one that says, call mom. Mom wants to buy your house. Anyway, so you put those out. I would recommend that you use a dedicated, you know, Google phone number that's a little bit harder to trace, just so you don't get in too much trouble. But just know that you're putting yourself at risk, because there are fines associated with Bandit signs in many municipalities and areas of town. So, what are the pros on doing your own Bandit signs? Well, they're low cost, right? I mean, at $1 a sign, that's pretty cheap. You can do a lot of signs. The other pro is you can target specific areas. If there's a neighborhood or an area of town that you really like buying in, you can just plaster that place and get some calls. Again, clever signs get calls, so that's a positive if you're clever. I used to say there was minimal competition, but we're going to put that over on the con side now and say there is a lot of competition. But and they're also easy to read. They're everywhere. They're easy to read. People are going to write down your number if they're in that situation where they need to sell quickly. As far as the cons go, the big one is you might incur some fines from the city or from the state. I've gone down both of those roads, unfortunately. Started putting them out on Friday, picking up on Sunday. So you need to do that. You may have to use a callback lead tool where you do voicemails, right? So you're missing calls, and sometimes people won't leave voicemails if they, if they call and they don't get somebody live. That can be a con, and it is labor intensive. Either you're putting out all the signs and picking them up on Sunday evenings, or somebody else is. So that's the cons on those. So that's placing your own Bandit signs. Another one that I've used a lot and still use is direct mail. I love direct mail. So direct mail is simply this. You're just sending a postcard or a letter to people that might want to sell their house at a discount, right? That's all it is. So basically, by doing direct mail, you can target sellers who maybe are on the pre-foreclosure list, which you can get off the internet. Maybe owners that live out of state. Those non-owner occupied properties are fantastic. Maybe they have a need to sell that non-owner occupied house because it's vacant or it's a rental property they don't want anymore. Or maybe they just inherited the home. You can also target those lists. So there's all sorts of different people that you can target for this that are great lead source for selling property, investment property. So what you can do is you can there's a ton of online companies that will do this for you. Back in the day, we had to do this manually. But anyway, now it's super easy. Online, you can pay somebody, and online there's these companies that will basically allow you to customize your criteria, very similar to what I was talking about before on my searches for MLS. And that is, the zip code you want to target for the direct mail, the neighborhood, non-owner occupied properties only. And what that means is that the owner of the property's address does not match the address of the property that you're interested in. Whenever you see that, they're not living there, and it's probably a rental property. More than 10 years old, again, as I said earlier, I do that because usually there's not enough equity if a house is like 2 or 3 or 5 years old, because people put money down but not enough. So then when you come in and make them a deep discounted offer, they can't accept it. They might want to, but they can't because they owe too much on the property and there's not enough equity there. Tax value, like I said, less than 250, less than 300, whatever you're comfortable with. You give these online direct mail search companies that criteria, and they will produce you a list, and then you can either have another company send those out, or you can do it yourself, or you can have a company do the whole enchilada. The last one that we did, we used a company called Postcard Mania, and they'll come up with a list, although I already had the list. And then they'll send out postcards, and they do Google ads, and they do Facebook ads that target the owners that you're sending them to. Somehow they figure out what the URL address is to chase them around on the internet. Blows my mind. But anyway, that's a company that you can use. So let's talk about pros and cons, right? The pros of this is you can customize your direct mail to go wherever you want, right? So that's fantastic. There's not a lot of competition. More people are doing direct mail today than ever before, but still there's not a ton of competition. You don't see a ton of people doing it, but occasionally on my rental properties and vacant properties I get letters, but not too often. They're easy to implement, and the nice thing is now that online stuff and cell phone and text stuff is so prevalent, meaning, I get texts at least once a day from somebody who want to buy one of my houses. It's, not a homestead for me, one of my rentals. Get texts all the time. I get emails all the time. Mail, people aren't doing mail a lot anymore. So now it actually stands out. It used to be you'd be just buried with all the other mail, but now it stands out. So that's kind of nice. And it's real easy to implement, right? Just use a service like Postcard Mania, and they'll just handle everything for you. The downside is, the con on direct mail is that it can be very expensive, right? And it might generate too many calls, or it might generate too few calls. So that's kind of the two big downsides, but I still really like direct mail. It allows you to attack a targeted segment that you want to really focus on for purchases, and I would look into it and look at the costs involved. It's expensive, but not terribly expensive. It's a lot less than TV or doing a billboard or something. So next is neighborhood searches, okay? This is going way back old school. So what you do is you just basically hunt for vacant homes. You pick a neighborhood and you start driving the neighborhood, and you look for houses that have high grass, no window coverings, mail's piled up in the mailbox, newspapers are piled up on the porch, obviously vacant. That's what you're looking for. Houses that maybe need a little work and are vacant are even better. So how we used to do it is we used to use key maps. I don't even think they make them anymore. If they do, no one uses them. But you can take a map of a neighborhood, and we used to highlight the streets if we drove them in particular areas that we wanted to focus on. So if key map code 488 was a part of town that we loved, then we would just start driving the roads, the little residential streets in key map 488, and you highlight on that map where you've driven so you don't do it twice. And as you drive by, you just note any addresses that might be a vacant home that you might be interested in purchasing in, and also maybe take a picture of the front that has maybe the address so you won't forget. Then what you can do is you can go online, you can use tax rolls, you can use internet-based companies, I think Lead Dog is one, to find these owners' addresses, emails, and telephones. Once you figure out who the owner is, what their email address is, what their home address is, if you can get their telephone number, then you need to send them a letter, and if you can, call them with the intent to purchase. Now, you, again, are seeing a lot more people calling and texting people doing just this. So there is more competition, but again, it's still a very viable way to purchase property, especially in a targeted area that you want to buy in, and you just start driving those neighborhoods and you'll find possible properties. The trick is to find the owner, actually get in contact with the owner, and then convince the owner to sell to you. But Nothing ventured, nothing gained. This isn't easy. This isn't for the weak-hearted. So you can make it happen. We did it a lot. So what's the pros on neighborhood searches? Well, you can get some really good bargains because a lot of people aren't doing it, right? There's very minimal competition. So again, a lot of people aren't doing it. And it's easy to implement. You literally could leave your house today and drive around in your neighborhood and write down 2 or 3 or 4 houses that look like they're vacant and maybe need repair, but definitely are vacant. Chase the owners down and then see if you can contact them and get a hold of them and get them to maybe sell. You can do that today. Now, the cons of this, the downside is it's labor intensive, right? It takes time to drive neighborhoods and take pictures and keep track of where you're going on the map with the highlighter. I get that. And their close ratios are going to be low. It's going to take a lot of drives and a lot of calls in order to close a purchase. But that's okay. Again, not very many people do this, so if you put the time in, you can make this happen, I promise. So that's neighborhood searches, the pros and cons associated with that. Now let's talk about for sale by owner. You know, you'll see those a lot. People have a sign yard that says for sale by owner. Go ahead and call those people. There's not a realtor involved. They're not on the multiple listing service because there's not a realtor involved. So you've kind of got a one-up on there. And then just call and see if they're interested in selling. Now, they may not be interested in selling at a discount, maybe in this market, but you never know. And if you don't ask, you won't find out, right? The worst thing they can say is no. But you got to call and ask. So when you're doing those drives through those neighborhoods, as we talked about just a second ago, neighborhood searches, you should also be writing down any for sale by owner signs in front of properties that you might want to purchase, right? Makes sense. So the pros on calling for sale by owner, folks, is number one, it's easy to implement. You can start that tomorrow. You can start that today. Boom. Minimal costs. Again, you're just talking about gas. You're going to have multiple properties to choose from depending how much people use MLS in your market versus how much people sell their houses themselves in your market. Again, in some markets, for sale by owner is like 90% of the listings. Crazy. The other nice thing is that you've got the phone number of the owner. Boom. So you can automatically cut past how do I find the owner because you know who the owner is. So those are the pros on that. Now, for sale by owner, cons, one, you got to do this daily, right? You got to be out there. You wait too long, especially in this market, you're going to miss the boat. So you got to do this daily. A lot of times pricing's kind of set. I got to get $129.9 or I'm not selling. So just know that because they're already got it listed to sell in their mind, listed meaning at least a sign out in front of their house, they've got a number in their head, and it may not be the number you want to pay, but that's okay. Some sellers will negotiate, especially if you tell them that you're a cash buyer or that you're using, short-term money, which is a cash buying really, and you can close in 4 or 5 days. That's a huge, huge thing. I will say that some of the for sale by owner folks actually will have realtors involved, which is interesting. So they'll fake you out. You think it's a for sale by owner and it's not, especially if you go onto like Craigslist and look at properties there. You think they'd be listed by an owner on Craigslist, but they're actually listed by real estate agents. So just be aware there may be an agent involved, but that doesn't mean you still can't make an offer. And then lastly, the con on for sale by owners, you got to move quick, man. Just like multiple listing service. You got to move fast. Especially in this market today, you got to go quick so your due diligence might suffer a little bit. So that's the pros and the cons of for sale by owner. So my last one, networking. This is my favorite. It actually kind of ties into meeting regularly with wholesalers, flippers, We Buy Ugly houses, home buying type companies in your market. That's networking too, but this is something that you should do as well. You should attend as many real estate investment seminars as possible, right? Because guess who goes to real estate investment seminars? People that are also flipping properties, people that are also investors. And I can't tell you how many times at seminars, somebody's got 3 or 4 deals that they're trying to just assign the contracts on because they don't have the money or the desire to fix up the house and sell it themselves. And you can buy these wholesale deals all over the place. We personally put on the largest, real estate investment monthly seminar every month in Houston. On the 3rd Wednesday of the month, we're at Stampede Houston on 59 North. Nice little plug there, 3rd Wednesday of the month. And used to have 800, 900 people there every month. But that was before the pandemic. We're now at about 400 to 500 people. Still a lot of people. You're talking about 400 people that are investors that may have property that may want to sell to you. So you got to go to these networking events. You've got to go to these real estate events, and you got to talk to people. That's the key that people miss. If you go, listen, and leave, you don't make those connections. You got to do that. When you're doing your networking, you got to make sure people understand that you're an active cash buyer, whether you're a real cash buyer or you're using hard money, short-term money, which is kind of cash too. You can close quickly. Let them know you're looking for more properties. Identify the big players and keep in touch with those people, because the big players, the people like I used to be buying 8 to 10 houses a month, are going to have extra property to sell to you. And see if you can get on their list. A lot of these networking investors, they'll have lists where if they close a deal, they'll send it out to their list. You want to get on that list because that's how you start seeing some of these investment property deals, right? So networking, very important. Now, the pros on networking, of course, easy to implement. You can do this tomorrow. You could literally attend a real estate networking event tomorrow. There's one every single day of the week, and a lot of them are for free in Houston. You can do this. Forming a great relationship can last for years. I have an investor in Pasadena, Texas, who I've known now for 20 years, and I still talk to him about deals. He only buys in Pasadena. He only buys a certain type of property, but I know that if I contract one there and I don't feel like fixing it up, I can send it to him. He'll buy it from me because we have a good relationship at what I'm asking, because I know what he needs to get out of the property as well, and it's super easy. So that's fantastic. The cons are on networking is you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs, right? There are going to be a ton of people that you're going to talk to, and some of those people are not going to be able to help you at all, but that's okay. That's part of relationship building and networking. Also remember, just like when we talked about meeting, going to other offices that buy and sell properties like the We Bugly Houses franchises, and dealing with the Bandit sign folks, you're going to have to stay in regular contact with these folks as well that you meet at the networking events, so they think to call you when they have a deal. So you got to stay in regular contact. So those are the pros and cons of networking. I hope that I've given you some ideas about where to find residential real estate, right, to be bought as an investment. I know it's hard to find deals, especially now with this really hot market. That's why you kind of need to get off of MLS and do your own work. Driving neighborhoods, networking, hitting up wholesalers that you know aren't fixing up houses, they're just wholesaling deals. Those are the places that you need. So I hope this gives you some insight, some ideas. I hope it leads to even more continued success for you as a real estate investor. As always, if I can help in any way, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My name is Mark Zimmerman, and I'm out. Thanks for watching, everyone. We really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe below.